Hello my friends and welcome back. Thank you very much for being with me again today. We like details, we like specifications, we like to know more and more about an issue that affects us, right? I would say yes. So these articles I have here will have Mr. Dmitry Medvedev, the former president of the Russian Federation, explaining what are the military targets Russia is aiming at in Ukraine. You're familiar with information that the Russian army and Russian missiles strike civilian infrastructure and, well, could be. And if you destroy, I don't know, power plant, could be considered, right? Infrastructure could be considered, I don't know, something that serves the civilians as well as the military. Now, Mr. Medvedev shows up and he clarifies. He's going to tell us how Russia sees this kind of targets. And obviously, that's the interpretation. That is, if you kill a civilian, you can't kill it, hey, I killed a combatant. You can say that, but you know, the reality, that's a civilian. So I wonder if, I didn't read the article, just the title of this article. So let's see what terms Russia uses for the targets that they want to destroy in Ukraine. And he says there are military targets. So let's see what is a military target for Mr. Medvedev. This article comes from Ukrainska Pravda. It is from today, December 16th, 2022. Medvedev names Russia's military targets, quote-unquote military targets, in Ukraine. And I'm enumerating them. Bridges, roads, energy, and politics. I think the last one is a kind of broad, not detailed, how should I put, confession here. So Dmitry Medvedev, Deputy Chairman of the Security Council of the Russian Federation, has named what he considers acceptable, and I'm quoting, legitimate military targets in the war with Ukraine, and said that this list includes civilian infrastructure, bridges, transport stations, roads, energy facilities, and factories. All right, so let's see. I'm quoting Mr. Medvedev. On the question of legitimate military targets, what are considered as legitimate military targets today, December 16th, 2022? Question mark. Within the framework of these rules of war, these are any enemy force, legitimate combatants and illegal combatants that have not officially withdrawn from its armed forces. 1. Any military and auxiliary equipment belonging to the enemy. 2. Any military infrastructure as well as civilian infrastructure that contributes to the achievement of military goals. All right, this is very broad. So military infrastructure as well as civilian infrastructure that contributes to the achievement of military goals. Bridges, transport stations, roads, energy facilities, factories, and workshops that are least partially fulfill military orders. Factories and workshops that at least partially fulfill military orders, etc. You know what etc. is? Anything else we do falls under the etc. Now, any military infrastructure as well as civilian infrastructure that contribute to achievement of military goals. Okay, next one. The military and political leadership of the enemy country. That means you're going to kill the generals, you're going to kill the Zelenskys. You can't kill the koshers. I mean, really? Anyway, so that means they are going to blow up the political leadership. Now, I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but we'll find out in a minute, right? The armed forces of other countries that have officially entered the war, which are allies of the enemy country, and facilities located on their territory are mentioned in paragraphs 1 to 4. So let's read this again. The armed forces of other countries that have officially entered the war. What's officially? Hey, we're going to fight you, or it's what you determine being official. Which are allies of the enemy country. no alliance, just by actions. They're allies. And facilities located on their territory are mentioned in paragraph. So that means that that could hit bridges and all that in the transportation in the countries that officially entered the war. Now, who determines that? Because if the Russians determine that, that could be, I don't know, 20 more countries, probably including Japan and Australia. And maybe what's the other guy's name? New Zealand, that provide help, aid to Ukraine, that therefore making them allies or at least supporters. Well, you support my enemy and I win, and I lose because you supported my enemy. What am I supposed to do? So I can beat this guy, bum, 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 and then I'm losing because you providing him with weapons. What makes you? Enemy? You? I think so. So, details. The previous president of Russia raves about the fact that NATO countries have declared a quote-unquote hybrid war on his state. So, Medvedev, the Russian speculates on whether the supply of weapons to Ukraine can be considered an attack on Russia and whether NATO countries are legitimate military targets for the Russian Federation. Earlier, Medvedev said that no one writes messages on social networks for him, and he comes up with all this on his own. Why is it important? Since 10 October, Russia has been landing large-scale missile attacks on Ukraine. Many missiles fired by Russian terrorists have hit infrastructure targets. Other missiles and drones have hit civilian buildings. By doing so, Russia is trying to persuade Ukraine into quote-unquote negotiations. Ukraine rejects these attempts of blackmail. Apart from 24th February, Russia launched large-scale missile attacks on Ukraine on 10 October, 18 October, 31 October, 15 November, 23rd November, 5 December, and 16 December. Whew, that's more than the 3 to 4 more missile attacks they said the Russians are capable. Anyway, background. Russia has been waging a full war. We already know that, and they kill everybody because that's the way they are. Bad dudes. Well, okay. So, now Medvedev said what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. I would refer you to a video that I made, and not only to that, but you can check out, I can't remember where I watched that. It was a communique made by the Russians saying, enumerating the bridges, the roads, the infrastructure that was blown in 1999 by NATO countries in Yugoslavia. If you remember, Yugoslavia was attacked by NATO, a defensive click-click alliance. 1999, bombarded for 70-some days, 76, 72 days or something like that, right? And bombed into submission. How did they do that? They said we're going to blow each and everything of this kind of infrastructures. Not military necessary, not necessarily military. So when these guys are talking about, oh, the Russians are hitting this and that, yeah, that's bad. But then you should go back to 1999 and you should say the same thing about your masters, your sponsors. So, you know, I don't like when a criminal points the finger to another criminal, right, and say, hey, you're doing this. What about you? All right? I can stop, but if your act is not criminal, which you say it was not, then the exact thing I'm doing should be not considered criminal as well, shouldn't be? Or should be. So that's another problem. Please check it out, and you can find it online as in YouTube or in regular, I don't know, as a text. And you can find out the damages, the destruction, the NATO countries, and there are, yeah, some of there are Germany, Great Britain, United States, all these guys that are the pinnacle of virtue nowadays and always. Not always, because Germany, you know what I mean, they will never wash that situation from last century. Anyway, the thing is, see how many bridges, all that they damage, including a attack and a bombardment a strike on the Chinese embassy in Belgrade. There was an accident with some smart bombs. People died, including Chinese staff. So, okay, before you talk, I'm going to cite now the Bible. Before you point the little thing in my eye, look at your little beam in your eye. Anyway, I'm using this just to build trust here. But yeah, that's hypocrisy and that's unjust. But again, it doesn't mean two wrongs make a right. But if yours was not wrong, then mine also is not wrong. That's what I'm trying to say. If yours was wrong and then mine is wrong, then let's go and get the perpetrators. They're still alive. Get them, put them in front of a committee or a trial or something. The same with these guys, and we do it right, correct? But then we get the Ukrainians too for hitting infrastructure in Russia. They didn't? Okay, all right. Like the Kerch Bridge? No problem. Anyway, thank you very much for being with me again today. I'm not trying to support hitting civilian infrastructure and all that. I just point out that the guys who did the same thing, and they consider that, they give you the argument. It was the guy who reported, I think, the NATO, whatever it was at that time. He explains why, in a press conference, he explains why, it was a he, why NATO is entitled to hit this target. Because he said, this is the argument, those targets indeed help civilians, but also help the military. Like the roads are driven by people, military drives on the roads, right? Energy infrastructure, energy is used by the military as well. These were the arguments. Well, if you go like that, factories, right, produce ammunition for military, and then who produces ammunition? Civilians. You know what I mean? And then you say, okay, military uses food, so let's blow up food factories, food providers, food animals, cattle and all that, destroy their crop and all that. I mean, if you go like that, you can blow up everything. You can even use, if you use the same logic as these guys, you can use chemical weapons, because military uses air personnel, right? So then, you know what I mean? If you go like that to justify your attack on civilian infrastructure. So yeah, if you consider your attack okay, then this must be the same way. Otherwise, not, you know what I mean. Thank you very much for being with me again today. Stay strong, stay smart, look for the truth, and be just.